This is The Competitive Edge with Sebastian Marshall. Welcome to The Competitive Edge. My name is Scott Britton, and I'm here to help you answer a question that we all have. How can I get an edge in my business and life? Each week, we're going to uncover how some of the most successful and inspiring entrepreneurs, entertainers, and thought leaders get an edge, so you too can reach your full potential. Thanks for tuning in today. Now let's get started. Yo, what is up, Competitive Edge listeners? I hope you're having a fantastic day. I'm coming to you from beautiful San Francisco at the moment, and I have to say, this is the first time I've spent some time in Soma, and it's absolutely beautiful. Anyways, today you're in for a real treat. We're incredibly fortunate to have Sebastian Marshall from Give, Get, Win and SebastianMarshall.com on the show. Have you ever encountered someone on the internet and just wonder, who the heck is this dude? Well, Sebastian has been one of these intriguing characters for me, mainly because from his writing, the guy just has a brilliant mind and he's constantly creating cool new things and always seems to be traveling, which is why he's just been such an interesting guy to follow from a distance and why I'm so excited to hear a little bit more from him today. In this conversation, we're going to spend some time talking about a few topics I find very interesting because I think they're profoundly important for our own success and happiness. And the conversation's a bit all over the place, but we talk about a few things like the intersection of biochemistry and performance to practicing directive thinking and impulse control. I can pretty much guarantee you're going to leave this conversation with some new ideas to chew on and strategies you can implement today. All right, let's dig into this discussion and hear from Sebastian Marshall. Sebastian, what's up, man?
Man, I'm very happy to be here. Very excited for this.
Me as well. And I thought right now we could just really dive right into a topic that we were talking a little bit about before I clicked record here. And that's the difference between cognitive and conative knowledge. Can you talk a little bit about this concept to people that aren't familiar with it?
Well, and I think that's the vast majority of people. It was pretty revolutionary for me when I came across it. It was in the introduction of Stan Rosenthal's 1992 translation of the Tao Te Ching, which is one of my favorite works. I think it's my favorite work of philosophy. I think Lao Tzu is my favorite philosopher. Really amazing stuff. For this audience in particular, I think people would like it. So the basic idea behind the Tao Te Ching is it's trying to get you to stop thinking. Does a lot of things, but one of the things it's trying to do is to try to get you to stop thinking that once you know something in your head, you actually get it. Because a lot of the trouble we get into is when we have a cognitive understanding of a situation, a theoretical, rational understanding, but we don't have that that understanding that defies words, that touch, that conative, experiential understanding. Conative knowledge is a synonym for experiential knowledge. So we could say there's the cognitive, the thinking, the numbers, like, so you see somebody, maybe who's got grief, because maybe one of their parents passed away, and you like get it intellectually. I think I'd be really sad if that happened. But like, if you've never really experienced something like that, it's like, you don't get it. You don't get it. So when somebody says like, he doesn't get it, you know what I mean? Or like if somebody like reads about, the form to do a squat. Or even to just do a bench press and like go really slow on the negative on the, when you bring the weight back down, right? If you've never done that, you can read that and be like, okay, that makes sense. I think I get it. But it's very different when you actually get it, when you do it, when you're doing it. And I think that the gap from cognitively thinking you understand something, but still being like awkward at it, still not really getting it. I think very intellectual, cerebral, intelligent people, maybe some of the people listening, certainly myself, I fall into this trap a lot. I think a lot of times we fool ourselves into thinking that our cognitive knowledge means we really get something. And then it almost can make you afraid to get in there and really do it because it exposes that you don't actually know what's going on. People that are really analytically smart sometimes don't want to get in the arena, as Theodore Roosevelt would say, and kind of get beaten up and bloodied a little bit to get that real conative, experiential, really getting it knowledge. I got a really interesting one last point on that I want your opinion on, Scott. I'd actually like for you to riff on this. Do you think too much theoretical learning can cripple people if they don't balance it out with action?
Totally.
I think so. I think that's the big takeaway.
I mean, dude, people ask me all the time, like, how many books do you read? And my answer is like this, for better or for worse, like I don't really read that much at all, maybe like 7 books a year. And the reason is I have so many things to take action on where I can get just as much, if not more valuable learning and I guess progress in areas of my life, that all this like theoretical stuff is not really helping me out that much. If I can't use my life or the lives of people that I care about, then like there's no reason for me to put that into my mind. I certainly value that the perspective of other people and things and in order to enhance the way that we think. But I mean, I just see so many people out there filling their brains with theoretical knowledge. And not only like are they not using it, but they're developing a muscle of inaction and procrastination from what they really need to do. And that to me is a huge problem.
Oh yeah. I'm 100% with you. So yeah, that's one thing that I learned the hard way. Cause it's like, I don't want to pick on anybody. I'm not picking on anybody that's very analytical, that likes to learn, and is very theoretical and is a book learner. That's certainly me. But as a trap you can fall into is to overuse your strong skills, right? So if you're naturally a very strong book learner and you're naturally not, very, physiological or kinesthetic, you're not like naturally going to go lift weights or do martial arts, you'd be tempted to overstudy the topic without actually getting into the gym. Which can cause you all sorts of problems. So let's talk about installing habits. I do time tracking almost every single day, sometimes in greater quantities and sometimes in lesser quantities, but I periodically update myself on what I'm doing on the day. So I'll have notes like, I'll pull up my Evernote as we're speaking to give some examples. First off, I always write down what time I woke up, how many hours I slept. It's pretty actually good predictor of the rest of things. And then I'll have like a note on here. I woke up early this morning, so I had 4:35 a.m. 4:35 a.m., morning routine complete, wrote a decent piece, then somewhat wasted time. 5 a.m., just burnt 25 minutes. Yuck. Okay, back on it. So I was like, I think I was, if I remember correctly, web surfing by accident. I saw one thing that was interesting. I just looked at Twitter quickly. You know how it goes, right? I block all these websites. I leave Twitter open to talk to people, and then bam, just 25 minutes down the rabbit hole. Oh, this is interesting. Here's my 5:10. Let's be real raw and honest with people. 5:10 a.m. I feel stupid, confused, and that I'm unlikely to make progress right now. Sigh. Okay. Yeah, I remember this morning. Like I was a little bit out in space. The morning picked up really quickly after that. But, so I write down stuff like that and kind of work my day out with that, right? So, like I look at yesterday and I got like, notes, accidentally wasted time on web surfing at this time, 5:30 p.m., very productive cycle right at the end of the day, just marking down as I'm doing things. 11 a.m., read for a while, exercise, morning routine. It looks like I took that day off. Looking at that one, 5:50 p.m. Man, I wish I could give you a bunch of heroic stories about like I just did a million things in a row. Here we go. Morning routine complete. Also did some cooking, reading. 10 a.m. did GSL stuff. That's the course that I'm instructing. Morning, etc. 1:30 p.m. all GSL work complete. 4:30 p.m. not a bad use of 3 hours. Don't remember what I did, but I guess I used it well. 5:40 p.m. outlined current projects. Did a somewhat weekly review. 8:40 p.m. leaving cafe. 11:05 p.m. getting ready for bed. So I do time tracking, right? I could break down all the cognitive theoreticals to it, but I didn't start with an advanced, complicated time tracking system. What I did was like realize, hey, I got to figure out where my time goes. So I started periodically writing down what time it was and what I had been doing up until that time and what I was going to do next. And that's it. And some days would have 1 or 2 entries, and some days would be like every 20 minutes I would update it.
One thing I wanted to get your take on, and I'll give you a little background on my past 4 days. I actually was at Tony Robbins' Unleash the Power Within. And are you familiar at all with Tony's practices or teachings?
Sure.
So one of the things that I really like, and this kind of is hovering around all of the things we talked about, is that you need to involve your physiology for maximum learning. So the idea is like, sure, I can like theoretically learn something, but if I am like involve or say something in terms of like an affirmation or, whatever it is, like if I want to put something into my brain, I can sit here and put it into my brain by reading, or I can like evolve my body and the way that I move while I'm learning or doing something. And our ability to retain and use that information and recall that information is actually far enhanced when we involve our physiology. And this is why, like an example of that, where when we want to talk about effectiveness is concepts of incantations, right? So people write down affirmations to change the way to change their thoughts, to change the way they feel about themselves, about certain things, to empower themselves. And he argues that you can actually far enhance your ability to change the way that you think about yourself, about other things, when you involve your physiology in that affirmations. So like an example is like, I have this power move where like I yell something that I want to believe, and I like literally am like punching the air as hard as I can. And my ability to recall that feeling, think that thing is like wired much deeper into my brain when I get my body involved. And I'm just kind of curious, like I know that you're really into the intersection of biochemistry and thinking and good work and kinesthetic information, all this stuff. And I'm just curious, man, like, is this something that you buy into? Have you ever heard anything about this?
Yeah, well, I mean, sure, of course, right? Like, I mean, there's a feedback loop. There's a feedback loop between, you know, what you're doing and what you're thinking and so on and so forth. You know, I think one of the first things that people don't realize is they don't realize that, like, the thoughts that come to your mind at any given time, you don't actually have that much direct control over that. You more kind of prime yourself to think certain things and do certain things. So as an really obvious example, right? When you first wake up in the morning, you're much more awake and alert, and you're going to have different thoughts, and you're going to have different judgment, and probably better judgment than you will later in the day. And, you know, when you're more sleepy towards the afternoon, as you start to get sleepy, you know, and that, you know, that circadian rhythm and all kinds of stuff like that cycles down a little bit, then you're going to be more sleepy, and you're going to be more likely to, for instance, eat junk food. Now, I will get up and I'll shadow box in the mirror or do some push-ups if I want to get myself awake. So I'm not just, you know, I'm familiar with that pattern of a power move. I've heard of that. I know some people that are really big believers in it. So I would believe that there's something to it. I like to actually just go get my body into it. If I want to do something. So if I'm in an area where it's not going to be obtrusive, if I'm working from my own home or whatever, sometimes if I really need to, even if not, I'll just go bang out some push-ups, or do some like dips on a chair or something. Right. So, you know, I actually do believe in that. And, you know, like then you get a feedback loop of, you know, your hormone mix is changing and whatever else. So, I mean, I would not be surprised at all if, for instance, I'm not saying it is, I'm not sure, but I would not be surprised at all if, you know, with a good power move, for instance, that your body will, you know, I don't know what the term is, upregulate, secrete, whatever, norepinephrine, which is adrenaline, right? So, like, I wouldn't be surprised at all if that picks up. I wouldn't be surprised at all if some of the stress hormones, which, you know, stress hormones sounds bad. It's actually no, if you have like no stress hormones, you're just kind of like chilling. You know, you want the right amount of them, right? So I would not be surprised at all if you start producing more of those. Similar, you know, like you have a coffee, adenosine, which is a sleepiness thing, and does a bunch of other stuff, gets suppressed. Caffeine's an adenosine antagonist. And it also, you know, you get a little bit of an adrenaline boost from caffeine, you know, especially if you're a light user of it. And likewise, you get up, you throw some punches in the mirror, you do some push-ups, you know, you're going to have a chemical reaction to that, which will then have a feedback loop of you'll actually think different stuff. You'll be more aggressive if you've just done physical fitness, potentially light physical fitness. If you've done heavy physical fitness, you might be more relaxed and calm, which will suppress anxiety because of the different mix of chemistry. So certainly there's a big loop between what you're doing. And I'm an amateur in this stuff. I'm not claiming to be any sort of expert. I'm just very enthusiastic and read a lot, but then actually try to put into practice and talk to other smart people about it. So, but yeah, there's definitely, you move around physically, you change what you do physically. Of course, it's going to change how you think. It's going to literally change the chemical mix, and our thinking is just chemicals and electricity.
It's interesting when you put it like that. I'm curious. I mean, I know that like thinking about biochemistry and the quality of the work that you do is something that's very present with you. And I'd just love to learn a little bit more about how you think about this and apply it in your own life.
Sure. So, I mean, I recommend people wade in slowly by figuring out, what could really help them a ton and go from there. So, I'll give you an example, but I recommend against this for everybody unless you do thorough research and talk to a doctor. So this is not advocacy at all of this, but it's been very good for me. And I'm just going to relate what I honestly did. I
like where this conversation's going, but just that introduction.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's a good time. It's a good time. So, there is, an extract, a pharmacological compound. By the way, as a side note, I hate the word drug. I just passionately hate this word because people don't acknowledge caffeine, liquor, and tobacco as drugs, even though they're all very powerful drugs. And yet, like, very mild, they don't acknowledge antibiotics as drugs. That has its own category, right? But then, like, very mild, safe, non-addictive things will be called drugs, which are lumped in the same category as, like, crack, cocaine, and heroin. But, like, the category doesn't include alcohol, tobacco, or caffeine. I don't know. I just don't like this word. Like, I think in English, we've had a war on drugs. And so, like, if it's a drug, it's probably bad or dangerous. And, so I tend to call it, like, pharmacology. And I still do recommend you stay away from, like, street drugs, party drugs, like, bad drugs, but, like, using pharmacology, like, makes a lot of sense. It's, like, one of the most amazing things. Antibiotics, caffeine, smart stuff like that. So what I did was I went and got some ephedrine. And then very carefully, knowing what I'm doing, heavily researched with slow ramp up times, and I researched it, and I don't have any heart problems in my family, so don't do this if you do. And I got a test dose and went very, very slowly, very, very, very slowly. And please talk to your doctor if you have any sort of issues or health problems. Just bring it up to them. Just say, like, hey, I'm going to do this, and please tell me if this is a bad idea, and we get some tests, whatever. But I took ephedrine mixed with caffeine, and I ramped up on that. And what happens when you mix ephedrine and caffeine is it promotes a higher metabolic rate. Your metabolism gets 5% faster. Does a few other things, but your metabolism gets 5% faster. That's a big deal. Everyone's like, 5%? Oh, I'm doing the math. Well, if I'm burning 2,000 calories a day normally, then that's only 2,100 calories on 5%. And it's like, no. That's a marginal 5%. You know what I mean? 5%, 100 calories, right? That's like, that's like 10 to... So okay, what? There's what, 3,500 calories in a pound, right? So if it's 100, that means every 35 days you're going to be 1 pound lighter. If nothing else changes, if you everything else exactly the same, which you won't. It's also an appetite suppressant, a mild one, which is the main reason people take it. If you do everything else the same on ephedrine every 35 days that you're on it, if the 5% thing holds for you, then you're going to be 1 pound lighter than you otherwise would have been. So after a year, that's 10, 12 pounds lighter. That's a big deal. Like, that's a really big deal.
Yeah, it's huge.
Yeah, but like, be really, really, really careful. I promise I'm not advocating this, and you really should, like, do a hell of a lot of research. And examine.com is a good place to start doing research, and then Google about it. Definitely do talk to doctors. A couple other things ephedrine does. I have mild allergies. I actually didn't until I got ill in, like, in a developing country. I got an illness, and then just after that I had allergies. It kind of just ravaged my body a little bit, like an infection. Sucks, right? That's what happens when you adventure. Sometimes you get the crazy tropical stuff. So, but, like, okay, after that I have mild allergies. Ephedrine, like, helps with that, helps with breathing. And the biggest one that I didn't expect, but was, like, huge for me, is it actually promotes norepinephrine without really stimulating dopamine very much, okay? So, as my non-scientist, if you're a biologist or a pharmacologist or someone that's performance-oriented or a doctor, and I'm saying it wrong, send a correction to Scott or me, and we'll both be really grateful. But I'm pretty sure I got this mostly corrected. Dopamine's like closely correlates with, like, getting addicted to stuff. Sugar, dopamine hit. Sexual imagery, dopamine. It's like dopamine's like gotta have it thing. Like that, I still don't understand exactly why. It's not quite a reward payoff thing, because dopamine can also, like, hit with fear. It's kind of like an alertness. It's like a pay attention to this thing. If your dopamine goes off, you'll want to pay a lot of attention to it. So if dopamine is stimulated with something, you'll crave it, or you'll pay attention to it, or be afraid of it, or, like, it will haunt you or stalk you. You know what I mean? So it's like, donuts. It's like, bam, that's a dopamine hit. So it's like, oh, those donuts. I smell the donuts. I want the donuts. Like, your body's betraying you. The body just wants, it's the dopamine, right? It's like just encoded. It's like, oh, I want the donuts. Give me the donuts. Give me the donuts if you have them, right? Well, so that's really bad news. That's really bad news. If you take anything that's like a triple reuptake inhibitor, is serotonin, dopamine, and norepinephrine, right? Cocaine, I think heroin, similarly, if I remember correctly. I've never taken either and never will. It just basically stops your brain from cycling that stuff out of it, right? So you have serotonin, kind of happiness thing. Dopamine, which is like the reward center, pay attention to this thing. And norepinephrine, they just call it noradrenaline in England, which is a lot simpler. But I'm just going to call it adrenaline for the rest of this episode. I'm just drop the American science-y term. So, your adrenaline's up, right? So you get an energy boost. Your serotonin's up, so you're happy, and the dopamine is up. So it's like getting encoded. I want this. I want this. I want this. Okay, cocaine is notoriously addictive and has ruined a ton of people's lives. Ephedrine's mild stimulant that does not hit dopamine. Doesn't hit dopamine. So you get the adrenaline, slight adrenaline from it, and you get the metabolic boost, all of which is turning into like extra energy that you're using for your thinking or physical performance. It's an appetite suppressant on top of that. So for a guy like me, Gosh, it's like a life changer. It's been terrific. I'm leaner now and faster than I've ever done before. I'm naturally got a slow metabolism, and I put on weight. It's great if I go to the gym and I eat a lot. I just put on muscle really fast, but I can also just get chunky if I don't pay attention. So pretty good for me in that. I also strongly suspect, when I have studied my own life and looked at it really carefully and researched it, I strongly suspect I'm a little bit lower than the natural adrenaline levels that most people naturally have, because a slight adrenaline boost for me correlates with a huge boost in performance, right? A huge, huge, huge boost. So, a lot of people that have obesity, if you read, I believe his last name is pronounced Taubes. I don't think I've ever heard anyone else pronounce it. Gary Taubes, right? Is that him? Taubes?
I have no idea, man.
Okay, well, he's a very popular author. He wrote Good Calories, Bad Calories, and Why We Get Fat. It's very, very popular on the topic. And Taubes, Taubes talks about how some people are more predisposed to getting insulin resistance, which means that your body over time becomes basically unable to use all of the macronutrients you have immediately. It stores them, and you basically need higher levels of carbohydrates, or your body craves them desperately. So actually, a lot of obese people actually are burning less calories when they eat larger amounts. They're actually burning less calories. So they're simultaneously fat, but also low energy, which explains people get on their case and get really moralistic to people that are fat, right? Which I think is really kind of unfair to them. A lot of people will have their insulin resistance, from my understanding of the science, be too high. And that's just terrible for you in a lot of ways. It just means you will store more energy as fat, but all the energy, all the macronutrients you store as fat, you're not burning. So you don't have that energy to go running with, to think with. If you're storing fat, if you're storing your macros as fat, not only are you putting on weight, which sucks if you don't want to, but you're also getting literally a little bit stupider. You can't think as fast. Thinking slower, I think, is a more correct way of putting it. You're literally having less fuel stores to immediately just have that transformed into just kind of playing around and being high energy and things like that. So, you see skinny people bouncing off the wall and stuff if they eat a lot, right? Or just having a ton of energy to go running or go dancing or whatever. But somebody that's, got insulin resistance, someone's got insulin resistance, that can be life ruining. Do you know what I mean? They're storing fats. They're getting chubbier naturally on the same amount of food, right? And then they have less energy because, the energy equation balances, of course, right? If you're storing it, you're not burning it. If you're not burning it, you don't have it, right? So that person, would do well to recognize that, learn a little bit about that. If you're heavy set, you want to learn about insulin resistance, make sure you don't have it, get more insulin sensitive, and you can actually train for that, eat differently for that, get on that. And that's very important and valuable.
Let's say that somebody who's listening perhaps has a little extra jiggle that they'd like to get rid of, especially after hearing the incentive that they're actually hurting their cognitive abilities.
True.
Have you heard about an insulin reset?
You mean just get off of carbs hard for a while?
Yeah. So essentially, when I started an intermittent fasting regimen. I actually did no carbs for 2 weeks to reset my insulin and completely, I guess I don't know how this affected my insulin receptivity, but the idea there is if I had developed bad insulin resistance over the years because of bad eating habits or whatever, that by simply getting off carbs completely for a couple weeks, I could actually reset that back to normal.
Yeah, totally. I do that too. Yeah. I go no carb for, month, 2 months sometimes, when I want to do that. Yeah, totally. It's a no brainer. If you're a little bit heavy set, you should do that, or you should try it. It doesn't work for everybody, but it should work for most people.
So I want to really quick just make sure that we kind of leave a solid actionable takeaway here. And in case people are interested in this ephedrine and caffeine mix, do you take a ephedrine pill with your coffee? What does that tactically look like to get those results that you just mentioned?
Depends on where in the world you are. It's not legal in the United States or Canada to market or purchase. I don't know about purchasing, but it's not legal to market ephedrine for usage as a diet supplement. You can only use it for breathing and whatever. I really recommend you research it first. Other places it's unrestricted. So if it's unrestricted in your country, great. It's been legal. It was uncontrolled in the United States for a while. What would happen is people would use it stupidly. They would take a lot of it and be out in the heat and be doing intense physical exercise and take way too much of it and, have a heart attack and die. So that can happen. So please don't be stupid and please do your research and please talk to a doctor and maybe even don't do it. And if you do it, get on it very slowly with a test dose. I really just will never, ever, ever recommend anyone do anything without doing a ton of research. And if you're not willing to like become at least very knowledgeable amateur in the field, then talk to someone who's like an expert. Like I'm not, this isn't like cover your butt stuff. This is like, you really should do this because it's your health and it's precious, and please don't screw it up. But yeah, so yeah, ephedrine and caffeine. I mean, I would just research the terms EC stack. Sometimes people mix it with aspirin. I don't recommend that. I think aspirin's no good for you, but do your own research on that too. EC stack, ephedrine caffeine stacks, commonly used among people in the fitness world. Examine.com is not a bad place to start on anything. It's really a wonderful website. And then, just Google EC stack side effects, EC stack effects, EC stack dosages, and so on. Mine are 24 milligrams of ephedrine hydrochloride and 200 milligrams of coffee, either in a caffeine pill or just a couple cups of coffee, 2 or 3 times a day is what I do. But no one should go to that right away. If you first do your research, and second, talk to a doctor. But after doing those, you should do what I did and start with like 4 or 8 milligrams of ephedrine with like 100 milligrams of caffeine once a day for like 2 weeks. Life's a long game. It's a marathon. Like, people are in such a hurry. They do dumb stuff and they hurt themselves. Like, don't do that. Like, don't be dumb, please.
I think that's good advice. Have you ever tried L-theanine and caffeine?
I haven't, but I've heard great things about it. You?
So it's actually something that I currently do. And people that aren't familiar, L-theanine is a natural mineral, and combined with caffeine, it's actually been scientifically proven by a variety of studies to enhance your motor skills and cognitive abilities. And in addition to that, what I've noticed is not only am I like more focused and more sharp and on, but actually the caffeine high, more or less, that I get is more relaxed. So for me, when I have this combination of a L-theanine vitamin and my coffee in the morning, I actually get a much more sustained, longer, smoother focus. And I've really just been enjoying that additive with my coffee. So I'd recommend you check it out, Sebastian, and anybody else who's listening. If they're looking to get rid of the coffee jitters, or even just maybe perhaps enhance their morning coffee, check out L-theanine with their caffeine, and I'll make sure to link that up in the show notes.
So then before we move on from that,
okay,
then, let's do a quick hit. Well, if you like the more relaxed thing, you should check out raw cocoa, which contains theobromine, or theobromine, I don't know the pronunciation, which works extremely similar to caffeine but smoother, right? And also synergizes with theanine. So I was doing that for a while instead of caffeine, and it's terrific. You just get raw cocoa, no sugar added. Maybe mix in some butter if you're doing like the Dave Asprey thing, which is quite nice. Maybe stevia, no sugar in there, right? Artificial sweeteners, depending on how you feel about them. I'm okay with them. And then, from there, I find that one to be really a terrific one. So think about the raw cocoa, how the way you described the theanine with the caffeine, I think you might particularly like that one.
Awesome. Great tip. And just so we're clear, I'm interested. Is that like the raw cacao powder?
Mm-hmm. That's correct. Yeah, 100%. Yeah, get cocoa, 100%, no sugar, no milk, nothing. Just it's actually kind of bitter by itself, so that's why I like to add stevia to it. I don't add stevia to anything except for like that, and like a couple of couple of protein powder things that are just not so great by themselves. I like to make it with water. You pour water in it. I like to stir butter into it and stevia, and I find that to be kind of like reminds me of like a yak butter tea, like a Tibetan thing, but obviously cocoa-y. It's really nice. Kind of gets nice and frothy, and it's got a very smooth, it's like a caffeine effect, but it's just very slightly smoother and more pleasant. So I would try that out if you like the pleasant caffeine thing.
Good stuff, man. So I want to kind of shift the conversation here to another thing that we talked about a little bit before we hopped on the call. One of the things that we're both passionate about is just being intentional and directive with our thinking. And I think one of the, key concepts that you've been an influence on me in reading some of your stuff and listening to other podcasts that you have is this idea of impulse control and how important that is for our ability to produce great work. Can you talk a little bit about this concept?
Absolutely. I love it. I love impulse control. I'm like the biggest, I'm the biggest advocate for it in the world. So here's the thing, right? If you kind of look at how the mind works, it seems to me that thoughts emerge kind of as impulses, as this kind of raw information, and you don't have a complete control over that, right? You have like a long-term effect, you can shape it, right? But if you're walking down the street and you see an H&M advertisement with just like a beautiful scantily clad woman on it, like it might just get your attention whether you want it to or not. If you're recently quit sugar and you walk into a bakery, it might be overwhelming, right? And that's not because you wanted to think about these things necessarily. It's because it grabbed your attention. Likewise, things can kind of just, for whatever reason, remind you of things and come to your own thinking, or even not remind you of things. You'll just think of something. Okay. So these impulses will come to you. Something you want to do, just feeling something like, it's emerging from within me. I want to do this. I want to think about this. I want to spend time with it. Well, it turns out that your ability to manage impulses and deal with them, impulse control, seems to be a pretty generalizable skill. So, the granddaddy of all this, of course, which everyone's heard of before, is meditation, mindfulness meditation, where you just sit and focus on one thing. Maybe your breath, maybe burning candle, and you try to do nothing else. And you try to think about nothing else. And you realize it's really hard, and there's a lot of chatter going on in your head. But what I did, and was great for me, and I have not heard elsewhere, is go out of my way to do impulse control training, which is to put myself put myself in situations, or take situations that commonly happen and try to break my normal impulses and patterns to gain a greater awareness of as they arise, and to just become a mentally tougher, stronger human being. So these are things like, when you're eating a meal and you're kind of hungry, like just deciding exactly how much of it you're going to leave on your plate and throw away, and just do it. Right? So instead of just like eating, you just like, you eat, and then there was like, a quarter of it left, you just leave it there. One time I was staying in a hotel in Shanghai, and they had this really nice juice thing downstairs in the lobby. I think it was like the Marriott Puxi in Shanghai, and they had these really nice juices. They're super nice juices. So one day I came in, it was like Shanghai, it's hot, it's humid, it's awful at that time of year. And I came into the hotel and I got a glass of juice in my hand, and then I walked up 7 flights of stairs to my room with a glass of juice right underneath my nose, breathing it, really desperately wanting it. My body is like seizing up. It was like hot out, and I was dehydrated. I was miserable. And I carried a glass of really great seeming juice up 7 flights of stairs, and then I poured it out and drank a glass of water. So what you do when you do this, and, I apologize for wasting a glass of juice, I get that. I'm not really not into wasting food or being stupid with these things, but I'll pay that $1 of lost juice costs for the mental training that I got out of that experience, which still sticks with me. Because you can have something placed in front of you that you really badly want, your body wants on every single level, and just be like, oh, whatever, no big deal. In fact, I'm going to go further up the stairs. I'm going to do more reps on this fitness that I'm doing. I can hold this position that really hurts. I can feel an overwhelming amount of fear before making a cold call and do it anyways. I can do this. And you can devise all sorts of training exercises for yourself, which I really got a kick out of. Super got a kick out of this. And, I would just design all kinds of just different exercises for myself. I would look for them in different situations, whether that be fitness related, whether that be doing something that I don't want to do, whether that be taking a pattern of normally just finishing food and leaving some, even if I'm still a little bit hungry, leaving a little bit of room for hunger, turning down things that I would otherwise want, and so on. And, the net result of that is it's a generalizable skill. You just become more able to realize that oh, okay, I have these, I have these impulses and I don't have to do anything about them. Basic things trying to not swear for a while can get you good at this. Cold showers thing's been popular. I've done some of that. Can be a good one. Any situation, where you're upset, and you want to blow off steam, you can recognize that and just steam and just own it. Just kind of eat your own steam. So anytime you catch yourself trying to blow off steam by complaining, especially, it's a really good one to just or here's another one. Here's the biggest one, probably that anybody should do. This is even better than meditation. Is find a time when you're really bored and you desperately want stimulation, web browsing, entertainment, having something sugary, whatever. You're just you're going a little crazy. You're a little bit bored, and just sit there and be bored and just own it. And what'll happen is you're this isn't so bad. This is okay. I really think 70 to 90, I'd say 70% of the dumb things that happen in the Western developed world right now are due to people not being able to handle being like bored or aggravated very well, and like going and doing dumb things as a result. So like if you can handle boredom, just handle it. Like, okay, I'm bored. I just kind of feel bad. So like you'll see those show up in my notes. Like if I'm in a bad mood, I'll just write it down. Right? I'm like, I'm in a bad mood. I'm just gonna like be here in a bad mood and not run from it. And just own it. And then it'll like pass and you can start doing great work, as opposed to getting in like an OCD click loop on like Reddit or something, you know, which I'm not claiming I'm better than. I've certainly indulged in plenty of that in my life.
Yeah, that's super interesting. So just to be clear, you know, if we do things like we don't drink the juice, or perhaps like we don't have that extra food on our plate that we really don't want, that muscle that we build, an ability to exercise self-control, willpower, impulse control, whatever you want to call it, is going to be pervasive across all areas of our life.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's a few different things. So I would say something where you got to endure and something where you got to be vigilant, rely on different parts of the equation. I made a little equation up, NADA, notice, acknowledge, decide, act, for dealing with almost everything. And the first one is just like noticing, right? If you notice that you're having a desperate craving for something, like if you can intellectually notice or like get a reflective noticing of it, you've got a good shot at winning the battle. Actually, when you're untrained, maybe not. You might lose, and that's the most frustrating, actually. But over time, just noticing that you're about to go to Reddit because like you're intimidated by the work that you're doing or the creativity is not coming. Noticing that you're intimidated. Noticing that whenever you get in a bad mood, you want to go eat some cake. Just if you can notice that, that's the first step. The thing I like to do after that is not fight it, acknowledge it. Okay? So you notice it, and then you go, okay, I'm bored. I'm miserable. I just like my body's screaming. Go feed me some cake. Go look at some entertainment. Just get out of here. I'm going crazy. Okay. You know, or I'm intimidated in this situation. I'm in a room that I'm not used to being in with people that I don't feel comfortable around. I am intimidated. I am nervous as hell. And you just, okay, so I'm nervous as hell. And then you decide what you want to do and you do it. I actually like to intellectually decide and then do it as a separate step. So like, okay, even though I'm nervous, I'm going to like go get a glass of water. I'm going to like sit down. I'm going to chill for like a second and then I'm going to get up and do this. And then you do it. And it actually works.
You know, it's so funny that you talk about this, man, because I had a moment yesterday where this was so relevant, and I wish I had this conversation before it. I was just having breakfast at a restaurant with a bunch of friends, and I try to eat paleo generally, or my little version of paleo. So I'm like one of these people that says, yeah, I'm paleo, and then like does my own thing, but you know, basically just doesn't eat a lot of carbs in the form of like grains or whatever. And of course, like I get an omelet, and they ask me if I want wheat toast or white toast. And in reality, I don't want toast, right? But I'm like, oh, wheat toast. Yeah, sure. You know, I'm not going to like tell this person I don't want their toast. And I got this, and I eat my omelet, and then I'm like, okay, cool, I'm done. And I'm just looking at this toast, and it looks so good. And eventually, like after like 10 minutes, I'm like, all right, screw it. I'm eating the toast.
Yep.
And I have the toast, and I made this decision to, you know, eat this thing that I didn't want. And after the experience, I was like, you know, that would have never happened if I just told them, hey, I really appreciate the offer for toast, but can you actually just like not put that on my plate? And I kind of just like set myself up for success in advance. But, you know, now that we're having this conversation, what I could have done, listening to you and the way that you think about this, is basically looked at this as like a challenge or a game or an exercise where I was cultivating an ability to improve this muscle that I want to have, instead of just kind of like looking at the toast and like developing an impulse and just eventually giving in. Right. And I think like that to me is a powerful mindset to take, you know, as we encounter just this like stimuli fest all day where things are grabbing for our attention and temptations there. If we really just kind of acknowledge it, like you said, and think of it as a way to build a muscle that's going to enhance our lives, instead of just kind of this, you know, thing that we don't acknowledge and thus don't really bring like focused attention and effort into.
Totally agree. And I'd throw 3 points at you on that exact score. The first one is the exact one you said, which is And you said an exact sentence that matches actually kind of like the state of research into like performance and happiness. The guy that wrote Flow, I can never say his name, Csikszentmihalyi, you know what I'm talking about? It's a good book.
Yeah, man. I love that. I mean, the concept of flow is like something I'm like super geeking out right now. But anyways, I'll let you continue.
Well, he talks about making things into games, right? So he talks about taking something and you can scale up or scale down the difficulty on something by making it into a game, right? So like, in the situation you described, the toast, no, I don't want the toast. Oh, the toast, no, I don't want the toast. That's like not fun, right? But like, I'm sitting here stronger than the toast and it will call out to me repeatedly and I'm going to not eat it and have it sent away. And that's what I'm playing now. That's actually a good time. And it's probably less aggravating. So that's the first thing. Second thing is, you are absolutely right. If it's actually like a, thing where the stimulus is overpowering or you gotta, like you're hooked deep into it, right? So like if you're really you're really trying to get off carbs and like you kind of failed a couple times recently, so you're not confident in your ability, then get it out of your environment. That's totally the right call. Just get the stuff away from you. I use Self-Control for Mac. I believe it's at selfcontrolapp.com, and I use Freedom. So Self-Control will let you blacklist entire sites. You can do it for 24 hours, but you can also edit your program to do it for like up to a month. So I edited it on the terminal, and like if that's interesting to your readers, I can actually find the blog post where I posted the code that somebody else sent me. Like, be careful doing this; you can block sites on your computer for quite a while. But like, I have a bunch of sites, like sites that I play chess on. Like, I just block all the chess sites like for months at a time. I don't want anything to do with it. So you block it, or use Freedom, block the whole internet, right, for a while. So I do those. I control the environment. And the third thing that I'm going to throw at you is if your really high concept goal is to eat really clean, then you might want to notice, okay, why am I not sending this toast back? I know it's dangerous in front of me. Well, I don't want to hurt this server's feelings. I don't want to like waste food. I don't want to look inconsistent and like a buffoon that orders toast and doesn't send it, whatever. Everybody has thoughts like that, right? Where they are more concerned with other people's feelings, or their own self-image. So they do stuff that's really harmful for your life. Right? And like, sometimes you got to compromise, and maybe I don't know if you have to, but sometimes it makes a lot of sense to compromise and to do something that you don't want to do, or even you take a small hit, right? You screw your schedule up, you miss a habit or something to like really take care of somebody that's close to you. But in this case, nobody's better off because you ate toast, right? And there's many, I would say 90% of situations like that where somebody like loses in their own life and takes real damage to like be consistent, with something they said, or to like not hurt somebody's feelings, is really bad. So another impulse control thing is like, why aren't I sending this back? Wait, I got this feeling that like, well, because I ordered it and I don't want to look stupid or whatever it was, like you dig deep a little bit into it. That's a training exercise too. Like, hey, I'm sorry, I ordered this toast, but can I send it back? That kind of thing. So there's been plenty of times where I was like, I ordered pasta and I'd be like, wait, you know what? I'm sorry. I feel really bad. I don't want the pasta. I will pay for it anyways. Could I get a salad? So that's an impulse control too.
I really like that too, because I do agree that like so many times we just kind of like are afraid to break convention, and we just develop habits of just like passively accepting situations or whatever it is, instead of like truthfully asking for what we want, or maybe embracing an awkward situation, like telling somebody that, hey, can you like send this toast back? Cause I don't want to, cause I'm going to like, my head's going to explode if I have it in front of me any longer. And I think like generally, man, like that's a really cool exercise, because not only do you develop like an understanding of like why you're doing things, but also like you develop this muscle of directly behaving in the way that is most beneficial to you and the people that you care about, instead of just like acting in accordance with society. And I mean, that just general idea of just like, whether it be like asking for things or taking action on things or whatever it is, and just kind of like taking control of your life is probably like one of the best things that you can do.
Absolutely. And I would say, some people listening, I'm sure, live pretty conventional lives and have happy lives, nice family, nice friends. You're in the community, you work a job you like. You don't got to be radical. The thing to even start noticing before societal conventions is notice when you're doing something out of vanity or image concerns. Like get rid of that. You know what I mean? Like, you don't gotta say like, all right, I don't think anyone should wear pants. I'm going down the street in my underwear. Like I pay a lot of heed to society personally. It's like just easier than just making waves. It's easier than making waves all the time, right? But when it's your own stupid vanity that's doing it, I mean, that's really, really bad. Do you know what I mean? Your vanity, I'm a big shot. I shouldn't have to do this work. Like, why isn't this easier? It should just be easy entitlement, right? These things are just like really lame. So strip, before you think about getting all countercultural, like physician, heal thyself, look in the mirror. And it's hard to admit that, like, can I throw something else out here? It's a little bit tangential, but I think it's super useful.
Throw away, dude. Throw away.
I think it's super useful. Like, I challenge any listener of Scott's that's on here right now to actually own the areas where you're okay with being vain. I challenge you to like think about like where are the areas that I kind of like care how I appear to other people, or like I like to look in the mirror, I'm really proud of, like, do you brag up some credential you have, or your job, or your clothing, or the way you look, or your hair, or how you groom yourself, or whatever. Like, look, I got a great house, or like, look how cool and connected I am, or like what, and like just own it. So like the more you can just own everything you're vain about, then you get that control, you acknowledge it, and then you can choose, right? Because there's some things that I'm vain about, and I'm totally okay with that. I'm like, I guess my vanity's going, it's all right. And I can I know it, right? So I know when I'm feeding the dragon or not. You know what I mean? And the people that don't know they're feeding the dragon, like the dragon is like tricking them into being like, I'm not a dragon, just believe that food there. It's like, so like, you own it, like if you got a vanity thing going on, if you got an image thing going on, if you got a pride thing going on, an anger thing, just own it.
I think it's important to really be introspective about this because, quite frankly, I believe that the preservation of our vanities and egos often results in a poor quality of life and results for not going for what you want and, choosing to uphold an image that truthfully, like, nobody really gives a crap about, is more important than doing the thing that you want. And just to give like a specific example of that, like, maybe you're afraid you're at a networking event and there's somebody that you really want to talk to. It's the big CEO, the person that spoke, and you have in your mind that, I'm going to look stupid if I go up there and I don't know what to say, or, I haven't done something incredibly relevant to this person or whatever it is. And you decide to preserve your vanity of like not looking stupid instead of going and talking to somebody and potentially, cultivating the fire seeds of what might be a transformational relationship in your life. And I think that people just constantly make decisions like this. And it's really important just to be aware of it because your life can be dramatically better when you decide to act differently and to really just pursue the things that you actually want to pursue instead of preserve your ego.
Totally.
Talk to me a little bit about this idea of dichotomies. I mean, we talked a little bit kind of like around nutrition and discipline around that. And I know that like one of the things that you do is create these dichotomies to make the decision-making process easier.
Sure. I like to slice a lot of hazy things up. So, a lot of times there's something and it's like, you don't know if you're doing well at something or not. The easiest one you can do and the easiest way you can do it is to try to make it binary. Right? So if it's something like, you want to, I'll give you actually some examples, from my own life here. One thing that I decided was that I wanted to take others into consideration more when I did things, right? And I noticed that the most effective people I know all did this, right? So instead of saying, okay, I'm going to just try to do that and then not doing it, which is what most of us, and me too, it's what happens most of the time. You try to transform your character a little bit. I said, okay, once per day, I'm going to explicitly take something I'm doing that should interact with other people, and I'm going to turn it, I'm going to make it more useful for them. I'm not going to do what I want to do. I'm going to make it more useful for the person that's going to use this. So if I'm writing, I'm going to make it more useful for the person that I'm writing to. I'm going to take their point of consideration more. If I'm working with a consulting client, I'm going to think about what would make it more useful to them. If I'm designing, things in the nonprofit to work better, I'm going to say, okay, how am I going to actually make this more useful? Not to fit my grand vision or what I want, but like make it actually more useful. And what you said, right, when we're about to get on the call is like, hey, I know a lot about this learning thing. Actually, you didn't say that. You're a little bit more modest about it and more direct. But it was like, hey, but like to learn, right? Let's give really tangible, concrete examples because that makes it easier for people to learn, right? So that's like, get out of your own head, Sebastian. Don't give just theoretical examples. Make it really concrete. Pick hard, concrete examples. I don't know if you give that advice to everybody. That's really great advice for me. I tend to be an abstract, analytical thinker, abstract and concrete thinkers. I'm really abstract, so I'll talk high concept theoretical all day long, instead of sharing examples. So instead saying, I got to remember to pick a specific example, right? So that's one thing that I do. I actually have that checked off a spreadsheet. Yes or no? Do I do that once a day? Yes or no? Once today, did I like think when I'm doing something, okay, don't make this what I want, figure out the other person's point of view and act on it. Yes, no. Another one is in terms of eating healthy. I found that almost always, or the vast majority of the time that I eat poorly, which is not very often these days, which is great, but the vast majority of the time it would happen on days that I didn't have a good plan for where I was going to get every one of my healthy meals. So a day that I'm on the way to the airport, a day that I'm in a city that I don't know, right? I'm out of food in the house and I've been cooking, but I'm out, right? Those are the days that I would go off the rails. So actually on my little spreadsheet of things I'm trying to do in a day, I got a light spreadsheet where like I check things off yes and it goes green, or and it goes red if I do it or not. I actually broke into two things: eat healthy, plan, and eat healthy, execute. Right? So I made it kind of binary. So I could, realize that I had a good plan to eat well for the day. I'm going to cook this food. I got vegetables. I got eggs. I got stuff that I like. I'm comfortable with all this. I'm going to eat one meal in this restaurant and that's it. And then I just deviated from the plan. Or I didn't have a plan. I'm like, I'll figure it out. And I'm at the airport and it's like, well, buy a $15 pack of almonds or an $8 burrito. Like that's not the choice that you want to be given at that point. So, you can slice things up into as big or small of pieces as you want, and you can make them binary. Did I have a plan to eat healthy? Is a yes, no question. That acknowledges if I know where all my food sources are going to come from and if they're like convenient and like I have them at hand or know where to get to them. And I find that's a huge predictor of whether I eat healthy or not. So, you make these yes, no, you make these things binary, you slice them up, you make them objective. Sometimes you turn the subjective into the objective, or you split things into a couple pieces. It can actually make it a lot easier to achieve things.
I really like that, man. I really love the eating healthy thing. I mean, it's essentially like diagnosing where the failure point is, right? And that was in the planning, which puts you at, I guess, faced with a decision that was, you didn't even necessarily have to encounter if you planned properly. And I usually kind of like hate to do this right now in terms of like me talking about something I do in my life versus focusing on the guests. But I think this is really important. You mentioned character development and this idea of like binary decision making. One of the things that I did with the guys that I was living with in Brazil was create a code of conduct for myself and for the life. And these are like the virtues that I wanted to live by, embody every single day. And before this, I really, didn't really have as much intention to that part, just to my life. Like, oh yeah, I want to be a good person and I want to do the right thing and I never want to lie and all these things. But I didn't really have like a strict set of like rules that I could call upon and think about and reference when I encountered situations. And thus, like, it was easier for me to deviate from taking the appropriate action that made me the best man I could be. And what we did was basically write out like the virtues and the states and the people and the qualities that we wanted to embody. And it allowed me to make binary decisions to become a better man. And so an example of that is like, I am the type of man that hunts my fear, that goes for what I want and doesn't do things that to preserve my ego, but rather does the things that are going to enhance my life. And when I was when I'd be faced with decisions, I'd have these that I'd read and that I had attachment to that would allow me to make decisions binary. So when I'd see something that perhaps like I was a little afraid of doing, I'd be able to ask myself like, okay, like, is this in alignment with the type of person that I claim to be? And if the answer is no, then I should go ahead and not do that. If the answer is yes, then like I need to take that action. And I think it's one of the strongest, most important things that you can do to develop your character and make all of these decisions, all these things that we encounter in your life more binary, thus easier to take the right action?
Book recommendation for all the cognitive thinkers on the topic, The Effective Executive by Peter Drucker. He talks about, and I learned this from him, this exact principle that you just said, Scott, which is so powerful, which is don't try to fight every situation individually. You know, you want to have high integrity. You want to be honest. I love the no lying thing that you did. I think that's just terrific. What you do is, instead of trying to solve it one off, like, oh, I'm having two of my employees are fighting with each other, or like, oh, I don't know what to do with this customer that's asking for unreasonable stuff. Instead of trying to solve this specific instance firefight, you set a universal principle. You try to figure out the situation and solve it universally. And when you start trying to step back from whatever situation is on hand and find a universal, a binary, a yes, no, a this is what should happen, it's incredible. It's transformative. So Drucker talks about that. He comes at that at a very executive angle, very business perspective for the business people out here. And it's a really wonderful thing.
Yeah, and it's kind of like the if-then statements that I know you do as well. And it reminds me, honestly, of Tim Ferriss and how he kind of like scaled himself out of his business, where he just created these like universal principles for people to follow. Like if a decision costs less than $100, like you make the decision, that really just allowed him to get more done, go further, faster, and ultimately live his dream life instead of consistently firefighting. Yeah,
totally. Have you covered if-then statements?
I haven't. Let's talk about him.
Let's do it. So there's a guy, I don't know how to pronounce his name, but he's great. Gallwitzer. He's an NYU professor. He talks about goals and decision making, and I think he doesn't get as much press as he should because he's brilliant. He talks about if you got a failure point, right? So we talked about diagnosing failure points a second ago. If you got a failure point on something, design an if-then statement, like a trigger, right? So, you know, if I start, you know, if I accidentally order bread, right, as soon as I notice that I'm going to call out and say, I'm sorry, I don't actually eat any bread at all. Please don't bring it to me. Like, as soon as I notice it. If I order any bread, then as soon as I notice it, I'll do that, right? If it's raining outside and I don't want to keep up with my run, I will at least put on my running shoes, go outside of the building and run once around the block, and then I can decide to quit. So you pre-program these if-then statements into you. And it sounds so simple, but it's incredibly powerful. I can't quite stress how great this is. Sometimes, you know, like I actually will, you know, naturally am somewhat of an accommodating person. Like if somebody's asking for something that doesn't seem unreasonable to me, my default is to say yes if I'm on their side. And this was like, you know, eventually I got busy enough where I just couldn't do this. So I was like making too many commitments. It was causing a big problem. So I set one, which is like, if somebody asks me to do something that's going to take more than 20 minutes, then I'll say, yeah, let me write that down and check my calendar and tell you if and when I can do that. So that started saving me a lot of time, and I can do that a little bit more elegantly now. But you can install this about anything. You know, what they did experiments with tennis players where they said, what's your biggest weakness in tennis? Well, I get frustrated and I start screwing up my backhand. Okay. So they said, okay, if I start to get frustrated, I will, between the next time I'm between a serve, I will walk back. I'll take a deep breath. I'll roll my shoulders out, stretch, and then I'll come back to the game excited and ready to go. It could be if I'm feeling low energy, I'll do my power move. Could be that. And you trigger these, you kind of hardwire them into yourself. And it is incredibly powerful. I mean, like I just, this very simple thing of just like writing down on paper, repeating yourself a few times. If this happens, then I will do this. It's almost miraculous in its ability to change behavior for like no work at all. It's not foolproof, but it'll like take down the amount of like, they actually did studies as to how much this suppressed like bad eating. It took the amount of people, like they took a control group that just decided they were going to eat healthier, and they took another group that got these if-then statements, like if I get a craving, then I'll have a glass of water. If I get a craving, I will just say to myself, I'm not the kind of person that eats that food. Something like that, right? It would take down the amount of junk food they ate by 1/3 by just programming this little statement in yourself for 20 seconds or whatever, 5 minutes. 30% reduction in bad behavior. That's cool for like 5 minutes of work. That's pretty cool.
I would say so. Let me ask you, because I know a lot of people are listening to this and probably thinking like, okay, awesome. And they're going to go down and write down like 57 if-then statements in one day and then fail miserably.
Sure.
How would you begin to implement this in your life if perhaps this is something that you've never tried before?
That's a great question. That's a really good question. Well, let's zoom out to the universal case. Let's solve the universal case on that. what I try to do when I'm installing a new habit, installs a ton of them, or like this is a tool or a tactic that you can use, installing one of those or getting regularly using them. I aim for a 70% success rate on any new program and on the set of stuff that I'm doing. Okay. So if I say, okay, this seems really cool. I'm going to make 3 of them. All right. I should be regularly considering and using 2 of them in a week before I think about adding any more. Right. So if I succeed over 70%, right? If I'm 100% on all of my goals, then I'm going to maybe scale the difficulty up a little bit, either the magnitude or the quantity or the difficulty, because, I want to make sure I'm not stagnating. I want to be pushing my limits, but I also want to succeed considerably more than I fail. Scott, you're really into, studying how, people perform, and Tony Robbins gets into this. The negative things affect us, even the strongest, toughest people, more than positive events help us. That's just true. For hyperachiever types, it's even worse. So, I really do want to be succeeding like more than 2 out of 3 times. When I see other people that have like really experimented with what works best for them and can stick with it, I see some people say 70%, some people say 80%. I've seen 2/3. I don't really see much lower than that. It seems like everybody goes higher than 50% as a target rate on any new tactic, any new habit shift, or whatever. So you aim for that 70%. And if I'm succeeding at 90, 95, or 100, couple weeks in a row, okay, I'll ratchet the difficulty up. I'll add more. Hey, if you're feeling like, what, screw it. I think this is perfect for me. It's just right for me. I'm going to do 15 of them. Hey, give it a crack, right? And then at the end of the week, do a little review and say, which of these did I employ regularly, right? And if you got like 10-ish, okay, stick with it. If you got like 12, 13, 14, okay, cool. Like, you're flying, great. If you did like 2 or 0, then it's like, okay, scale down maybe, try 5 the next week of the most important ones. And that will probably lead to the fastest uptake rate.
I haven't encountered, and maybe this is because I haven't done enough research on it, but I haven't encountered like a habit installation plan or framework where there's just more direction in terms of like when to scale up, scale back down, when to add new habits, when to stop, when something is concretely solidified. So I just wanted to say I really appreciate you sharing that with us, man. It's great.
Yeah, try to visually represent it if you can. I do it on a spreadsheet. I call it my lights spreadsheet. I post them on my blog sometimes. So I do green and a Y if I do it that day. I put half. I made this half category so that like I could like do something a little bit wrong and not immediately get the red light on it, so that like I could hold a line there. But you could make it binary, up to you. And I just check things off as I do them, right? With projects, right? Like I focus on getting one project. I'll throw one other thing about habits too. Yeah, Scott, so I'm sure you're familiar with it, but have you dove into it? And I only did this recently, so this is pretty new for me. Have you looked at the unconscious incompetence, conscious incompetence, conscious competence? You've heard of this, right?
I actually haven't.
Oh my goodness. Well, okay, you're in for a treat, and maybe anybody else.
But I am familiar with the idea of, so this is actually a thing that I got from this weekend, was that this notion that like we are consciously competent at a lot of things, and we don't necessarily take the time to codify why we're getting good results at them. And as a result, like it makes it harder for us to replicate our success. And I don't know where you're going with this, but like that was something that I was like, wow, you know what? I should really take time to, when I'm consistently getting results and doing something really well, really take time to like codify exactly what I'm doing so that, whenever I want, I can access those results simply by following a process that I'm completely aware of.
Totally agree with that. For whatever reason, smart, successful people usually don't study their successes. They study their failures. It's like just a weird thing, right? Actually I learned that from Jeffrey Gitomer, who's an excellent salesman, sales trainer, one of the best in America. And, he says you're going to learn a lot more by studying your successes than your failures. Study every one of your successes thoroughly. So totally, any habit, any project, any month of your life that goes well, study it. Don't just accept the serendipity, and, luck will maybe play a factor. If you get ill or something that can hose a month. Totally true. But study your successes. That's the correct call.
So that's great advice, man. So, I want to land this plane here because I feel like truthfully, we could talk about like mindsets and philosophies and practices and tactics all day long. But I usually end these episodes by asking somebody to share like one way they get a competitive edge in their lives. And I know that you have like a ton of really cool strategies and practices that you use to get an edge in your life. And I'd love if you could just maybe share one practice that you do that really helps you take your game to the next level.
Okay. I'm going to make one that will only appeal to about 20% of a normal population. I bet it'll appeal to like half of the people listening. But if it's not you and it doesn't make any sense, that's fine, because the other half is life-changing, and I've never heard anyone else talk about it. So that's fine. So is that okay? Can we set the ground rules there? Can I do that?
Oh, dude, when you had me at, I've never heard anybody else talk about it.
Okay. Well, I'll tell you the first thing that other people have talked about. It's something called the arrival fallacy. The arrival fallacy says, once I've done X, I'll be happy. Okay. Once I graduate, once I get the job, once I get promoted, once I get out of debt, once I can travel, once I get married, once the first kid's born, once the kids get out of the house, like whatever, then I'll be happy, then I'll be happy, then I'll be happy. And it's never true and doesn't work. So it's the idea that once you get to a certain point that you'll be happy is like false. Now here's the thing, right? I'm more into like achieving and doing meaningful things that I deem important and good for the world, and like things that I think are right and cool, than I am into being happy. That's like my thing. Like that's my judgment. This was a common thing actually in the past. Everyone now thinks, but it just really makes you happy. It's like telling the samurai that like they were all into being happy. Like, but they were. That's why they did all the loyalty, honor stuff. Is because it's like, okay, they put everything in that model of honor, and like they would think your happiness was like Anyway. I'm not necessarily always into the happiness thing, right? So like, I get it. And I know a lot of high achieving people that are miserable, and they're achieving a lot of stuff, but they're miserable, and there's never any payoffs. Here's the thing. A lot of the high achievers I know are only happy after they have a perfect day and everything is going well and they're on a run of things going well. Otherwise they feel like they're behind schedule. Okay. Does this sound familiar? Like, do you know anybody like this, or does this ever happen to you?
Oh, dude, I know a guy who's pretty close to this microphone right now that it sounds pretty familiar to.
Okay.
Although I'm generally just a really happy dude. I'm just really happy dude, but I am a stressor achiever for sure.
Okay. So this is it. So I realized, okay, this arrival fallacy thing was kind of screwing me up, right? I was saying, like, I would only be pleased with myself if I was having an epic day, all of my projects were on track, nothing was disorganized in my life, and I literally squeezed every moment of the day out of the day. What this made me predisposed to do was to collapse badly if the day started badly. True. And I would challenge anyone here that will not let themselves be happy unless they're perfect, that I bet you are unable to moderate and stand adversity in some situations where you can't win under your own standards anymore. I bet sometimes, maybe, possibly, maybe, you fold like a house of cards sometimes in those situations. And you can get rid of that. So what I did, and if you have any sort of mantras or anything you look at in the morning, this is on my little, things I do. Like I have a little checklist of things that I do: make the bed, drink water, take vitamins, brush my teeth. The very bottom of it says no arrival. Write it however you want. But the basic idea is that, there's nothing particularly special about having an amazing day today. I want to have an amazing day. I want to be productive. I promise this did not dull my competitive edge in any way, shape, or form. I'm just as competitive and just as achievement-oriented and do just as much stuff as I used to. More stuff. Because the first 5 hours of the day can go really badly, and instead of me saying, oh, today's shot, instead of just being angry and upset and generating all kinds of unpleasant things that are not conducive to creativity or productivity, instead of that, I can say, all right, there's no arrival. This is just a game. I'm just playing to try to win today. Instead of looking at my project plan as like I'm trying to, free, Normandy Beach from the Nazis. And like, if I fail, just millions of people are going to die. It's not like that big of a deal. Like I'm setting out to write something. I'm setting out to teach something. I'm setting out to, do my work in some area. I used to make it such a big deal. Right. And then if it got off track, if the morning got screwed up, if there was an emergency, if something that I thought would take an hour took 4 or 5 hours, I would get really frustrated. If I screwed up on my diet, sometimes I'd go off the rails and binge. Another common thing. Right? So, once I just try to make myself realize, and I plan my days and I know what I'm going to do that day and everything else, but I try to emphasize to myself when I look at it that this is not a cast iron set of commandments given to me that is a really bad thing if it doesn't happen. It's like a game. I'm striving to win at doing my project plan for the day. And I really want it to happen. I really am just as intense and driven about it as I used to be. But there's no arrival. It's not like if I nail today perfectly, that I'm going to wake up tomorrow and it's going to be perfect. I was on this neurotic treadmill. So I just remind myself, arrival fallacy, can research it if you want, but that acceptance that I'm going to approach this day as a game that I can win. I might lose today's round. And even if I'm kind of losing, well, let me see if I can pull it out. I'm not going to, beat this round of Street Fighter with a perfect. Let me see if I can still win the match with a little tiny bit of health bar left. Let me see if I can get through this and do as well as I can. And sounds stupid, sounds small. I've gotten life transformative gains from it. So if you're that type A, stress yourself out achiever type, yeah, maybe give it a whirl.
Yeah, I really, really like that, man. It's really, really good stuff. And I think generally everybody can benefit from just not taking themselves and their goals and their little to-do checklist so seriously. Because at the end of the day, if you don't win today's game, odds are, fingers crossed, you're going to live to fight another day. You can totally bounce back and feel amazing in, the span of 12 to 24 hours. And just completely reverse those negative emotions that you are experiencing if you don't get all the things that you want to done.
Amen.
Dude, Sebastian, I really appreciate you coming on here, man. You've really got some wheels turning in my head. Hopefully everybody listening feels the same way. And I know that you do a lot of cool stuff. So I want to really just take this time to just give you an opportunity to tell people a little bit about Give, Get, Win, how they can help if they want to be involved, as well as where they can find more of your philosophical and tactical musings, should they be interested, because I know you have a lot of good ones.
Yeah, we can do some tactical and philosophical musing. I'm all about that. So yeah, Give, Get, Win, 100% volunteer nonprofit, looking to kind of change fundraising, but more importantly, trying to make an elite environment of people that are like pro-social, but also like really highly effective, have some really great trainings. We do charity deals. We set them up. Actually, I'd love to have you on there, Scott, if this ever makes a sense for you and you got the time for it. I think you'd be a brilliant person to have on there where,
Done.
Oh, I love it. Great. I wasn't gonna put you on. I was gonna I was gonna give you the plausible deniability. I was just gonna keep talking. I'm not breaking your arm on the air, right? I appreciate that. I appreciate that. The basic idea, right, is we do charity deals, right? So you've got all kinds of skills in business development and product creation and learning. So I'd say, hey, which one of these can you do something really unique and special for us on? And you would either do a class, or, we'll figure this out later, but you would either do a class or you'd give us some copies of your products, or maybe we'd make a special product. Maybe we'd have one of our team members get together and make a best of or a mashup of stuff, something kind of unique and special at a really, favorable thing. Then people see that. They'll put down some money for this. Maybe that's a hands-on live training with you. Maybe it's, a compilation of stuff you've done or products or some really cool thing. And so they get a really cool experience they can't get anywhere else. All the money goes to charity. So we think this model can really revolutionize the world. And, our team members need to learn organization, research, sales skills, persuasion, leadership, command presence, like consistency, execution, creativity, marketing. So these are like the skills, like the most important, best skills. These are like the things that are like really count in the modern economy. And it's really cool and it's really fun. So we're actually having an onboarding cycle of new team members coming up pretty soon. We just redid all of our training. We got back-end, operational stuff that we've got coming online, tons of cool stuff. Shoot me an email at sebastian@sebastianmarshall.com. If you go to givegetwin.com/Vanguard, you can find out a little bit more. That page should be up by the time this is posted. That'll be up pretty shortly. I'm just about to leave Istanbul and then that'll be live. And we'll be doing that. So givegetwin.com/Vanguard, VANGUARD. And that'll do that. You check me out at sebastianmarshall.com. I blog on there. Upcoming book, gatelessbook.com. In August, wrote that a little while ago. It's got neat. There's some stuff in impulse control in there. There's some stuff on biochemistry in there. It's kind of like a manage yourself kind of thing. But yeah, check that out. Check me out online. If you want to check out the blog, I got like millions of articles on there. Right? I wrote every day, mostly every day for like five years now. So there's a lot of them on there. And yeah, if you're looking to change the world a little bit, that's where I'd really love to hear from you. givegetwin.com/Vanguard. Email me, Sebastian@SebastianMarshall. Feel free to email me anyways. I'm pretty friendly. I'm gonna think about it if you're asking me something that's gonna take more than 20 minutes, though. And yeah, it's good.
Thanks, man. I really highly recommend everybody go check out Sebastian's site as well as Give, Get, Win, and hopefully check out the Give, Get, Win that I'll be doing with Sebastian as of 48 seconds ago. But dude, thanks again for coming on the show. I really appreciate it. It's been an absolute pleasure, and I look forward to talking to you soon.
Yeah, my pleasure. We'll be talking soon. And thanks for having me, and salute to everybody out there. I love what everyone's doing. Keep getting that edge. Work hard and turn it into good stuff. Thanks, Scott. Take care, everyone.
Before we finish up with today's Mindshare, I just want to say thanks for listening to another episode of The Competitive Edge. If you enjoyed the ideas in this episode and want access to all the conversations, tactics, and mind shares we'll be sharing in the future, the best thing you can do is subscribe to The Competitive Edge on iTunes. And while you're there, if you felt like this show has made a positive impact on your day, it'd be great if you could leave us a review on iTunes as well. Now, I know we covered a lot in this episode, and there might be a few key ideas or tools that you want to remember. So we went ahead and compiled all of the notes, links, and even a full searchable transcript of this conversation for you on lifelonglearner.com. That's life-longlearner.com. I also want to give you the details on a cool contest I'm running right now at lifelonglearner.com/fun. By entering the contest, you'll have a chance to win everything from Amazon gift cards to a free month of having your very own dedicated virtual assistant, to an opportunity to come and hang out with me and my buds for a few days, where we'll teach you how to create your very own passive income stream. To enter this contest and learn more about everything we're giving away, head on over to lifelonglearner.com/fun. And now, let's dive into today's Mindshare. Alrighty, well, I hope you enjoyed this interview with Sebastian Marshall. He certainly has a lot of interesting things to say, and is somebody that I really look to in terms of finding new ways to think about the world, think about the decisions we make, and ultimately implement habits that are going to make us effective and successful. One of the things that I thought we could talk about today in this Mindshare segment is this insight that I got from a recent Tony Robbins seminar that I attended, Unleash the Power Within, in San Jose just a few days ago. And basically, one of the things that's important in all of our lives and a fundamental human need that we have is to feel the need of growth, right? I find personally in my life that I am unhappy when I feel like I'm not progressing in at least one area of my life. And this is something that we all more or less need to feel to different degrees of importance. But for me, the need to grow is very important. And in terms of growth, this can actually be super challenging on our emotions, depending upon what type of person you are. So me and Sebastian both, I would say, fall into the stressor achiever type of person, where you try to achieve a lot, and in many instances do achieve a lot, but in the process, when you're continuing that upward progress, at some point where there's learning a new skill or working on a project, there's a bit of a plateau. And the achiever type, personality type, tends to try to fight and will their way through this plateau. And often they're able to eclipse it and get by it, but in the process, it becomes very frustrating. They become angry, upset, annoyed, just a host of negative emotions that make it just a less enjoyable journey. Now, there's another type of high achieving mindset and personality type that we can strive for that actually prevents these negative emotions. And this is what Tony Robbins calls mastery, or a master personality type. Much the same way this person progresses and receives, you can kind of see that upward arc of achievement and success and progress that makes us feel good. But what is different between them and the stressor achiever personality type is that they anticipate these plateaus in growth. So when they encounter an instance or a few days or a stall in a project or a new skill they're learning, they realize that this is normal, that it's impossible to have hockey stick growth in all areas of our lives at all times. And so because expectations are such an important part of our happiness, and basically, when there's a difference between reality and our expectation, that causes an emotional gap and these feelings that we often don't want, because they anticipate this plateau, they're able to handle it much better emotionally. And they still work through it and they still work hard. But the difference is the mastery personality type says, yeah, you know what? Okay, I expected this. I knew there was going to be a little bump here, and that maybe if I take a step back, take a moment to learn, see what I did did wrong, maybe reach out to somebody who's been in the situation before and succeeded. That's a much easier way to handle this than to get frustrated and then try to will yourself to overcome this growth plateau. So this has just been, something that I've now been thinking about the past couple of days, and I guess just trying to better align myself with the understanding and anticipation that whatever it is that we're trying to get good at or improve, there's going to be plateaus, and that's completely normal. And it's unrealistic to expect constant growth all the time. And if we do expect that, we're actually going to be setting ourselves up for unhappiness and potentially even failure, just because of the frustration that comes with trying to will or fight your way through a natural plateau. So this has been super interesting for me to think about. And perhaps if you find yourself going through a challenging situation at this moment, think about whether you're taking the stressor achiever mindset, or maybe shifting to more of a mastery mindset, where you realize that, listen, if this was easy, every single person in the world could do it. There would be no challenges out there and everything would be easy. And that's just not the case. These plateaus in our growth and our own journey are going to come. And, if we anticipate them, it's just easier to deal with and ultimately get through. All right. Well, I hope you have enjoyed this mind share. And I just want to ask you a favor. If you are a fan of the show and you haven't left a positive review on iTunes, it'd be really meaningful to me if you could go ahead and do that. And it's really simple. You can just click ratings and reviews, click some stars. It really helps me have new people reach the show, which is ultimately my goal, to help as many people as possible get new ideas and tactics that improve the lives of the show. So thanks again so much, and I look forward to seeing you next time.